Well, I feel like we should just stop. It went so well. Let's just, first of all the people who Jennifer has mentioned, and so many others in this room, do so much to bring the arts into the total picture. And that's really what this is about. It's not simply about what the arts can do, how we can enjoy them, how we can cheer. It's also about how they change our lives. And that's really what, when she talks about citizens, that's what I think. You'll notice in your program that this conversation is part of an ongoing series of discussions this year that the Aspen Institute Arts Program has been hosting and working on in strategy sessions and other convenings on citizen artists. Citizen artists, loosely defined, it's art and artists who go beyond the traditional medium to see how they can be of benefit to society. And further, second half of the definition is how citizens themselves can have art in their lives and how that can be of benefit, how they can influence and how they can choose. We had a conversation here, for instance, about 2 months ago about the ongoing technological revolution of things like Kickstarter or Donors Choose, where an ordinary citizen today can choose to support art in a classroom, a specific project in a way they never could. You had to belong to that PTA. You had to belong to something very micro. Now you have huge options. And that's what this is about, citizen artists. And Renée, who obviously is, we all would just happily stand and cheer right now, has chosen, in addition to her incredible artistry, to take her gift into unusual places and wonderful places to the benefit of children, of community, and to put her voice into what the arts can do, and to address how the arts can be a part of all of our lives in beneficial ways. So I guess I'll pick up where we had been talking about how we ended up with a group of third graders, and you were doing the Billy Goat's Gruff with them. And you realized at a certain point...
I was the third Billy Goat Gruff, in case you were wondering.
She was the
my
third.
role was.
Yes. Was that by choice, or did the kids cast you?
No, I was supposed to be the big one, so it was sort of an obvious...
Perfect. When you ended up in that classroom, and you were working with those kids, we discussed the fact that it really was work. It wasn't simply, isn't this nice? Would you talk a little bit about that, about the seriousness of the endeavor, that you think that the arts, how they fit in?
Well, it's interesting because Damian and I both come from very rarefied worlds, and worlds that are not easily accessible because what we do requires so much training and so much time, and for the audience to even appreciate what we do requires a little bit of training and time. And to go into a third grade classroom, there's no possible way that these children have any concept of what it is, what an opera singer even is or does. So it was really fun for me to be able to work with them and try to help them mostly project, mostly have fun, find their individuality within their parts, also find their voice. The whole thing behind performance in schools, on two levels. One is that, the appreciation for all of the arts, both entertainment and the historic arts, classical arts, but also their, and I think this is even more important, their opportunity to perform and to actually have a voice and say something in front of their classmates that gives them courage and gives them a shared sense of community, but also the individual sense that, hey, I just said something by myself and it took courage.
Right. I often think that is a singular moment that it's a choice that hopefully is given, but often it's not given in the way that is encouraging enough. Whether you're going to actually participate or not is that key moment. Whether you're going to stand on the side or whether you actually will open your mouth and say something. And then it's about how you say it. And then it's about, will you say it in front of just your friend or will you say it in front of a room? And by that progression, we find that children and children of all ages can participate or not, and that is a choice in community building. It's a choice in 1,000 different things that lead to a better society. So those moments are crucial, I think, like that encouragement, whatever it takes, that it's a puzzle for us, I think, in the room. It's a puzzle.
Right, and it's what great teachers are doing across the country, actually. When I grew up, I had phenomenal arts education in high school, and my parents were both high school vocal music teachers, so I saw it. That's all we talked about. I thought all families talked about it. I thought all families actually traveled across the country and sang about the stoplights in 5-part harmony. And it really went far. I mean, my mom was convinced that we were the American Fun Traps, and my dad, he fortunately said, no, we're not going to do that. But sharing that, what we've grown up with and what we've enjoyed and what has really fed our souls with children is a special gift.
And it's a number of different things, but I mean, I'm curious what you think maybe are the most important. But you know, last week Yo-Yo gave the Nancy Hanks lecture in DC, and he talked very specifically about what CEOs today say they anticipate needing for the workforce of the 21st century. Qualities, 4 qualities: collaboration, imagination, flexibility, and innovation. And coincidentally, these are all things that the arts bring. These are all things that, you know, the idea of collaboration. So let's talk about collaboration for a moment. There's that thing which is, sometimes it's a wrestling match. I discovered today, I told Renee that we both shared a collaborator, choreographer Elliot Feld. In the 1980s, choreographed a work on me, and Renee was doing a work with him roughly the same time in the mid-'80s, and it was not the easy experience, but it was a collaboration. Did you feel?
Well, for me, it was easy coming in as a singer, although the tempi all had to be exactly right, and you know, I learned a lot about dance from the experience, but watching the dancers work was an education. The amount of discipline, the tough talk, the perfection required and precision was fabulous, and it was a beautiful ballet called Adieu. I sang Hugo Wolflieder. In fact, I just pulled them out again and sang them in Vienna and on tour in Europe, in Paris, Vienna, London. And I thought, man, I haven't forgotten a single word, because we toured a lot, and I really got them in my body in a way that I rarely have time for as a professional. So that was a fabulous experience.
It's interesting, and it sounds like actually maybe perhaps the quality that was being expressed there was more flexibility, I bet. Like, how can I take this music in a different way than maybe I normally would, and find a way to still have my voice?
Exactly.
When did you think you found your voice, out of curiosity? I mean, I can relate this to dance quite easily, but
Do you know, I don't know, because the voice, you know, there's the technical and there's the artistic, and the technical I'm still struggling with. It's just, it's a lifetime of,
clearly.
You know, you wake up every day and your body's different, you're different, your cares are different, and it has a huge effect on the voice, which is a very fragile instrument. And the artistic is still growing, but I remember one crucial moment that my voice teacher used to talk about was the day I came in and holding a review in my hand, and I said, somebody said I had a beautiful voice. Nobody ever said that before. Because it's that instrument, that distinctive quality that you have that's incredibly important, I think, because it has to be a recognizable timbre. Somebody has to turn the radio on and say, oh, that's Renée Fleming. You can't sound like 100 other people. Is that true for dance?
It's exactly true, and sometimes it's mysterious. It's really like, why do we see that person? What is it exactly? It may not be the technically correct person. In fact, quite often it has nothing to do with that. It can be about, sometimes it's about old-fashioned show business. I remember Arthur Mitchell talking to me about moving my face like this so that my cheekbone would hit the light. And I said, good tip.
Yeah.
And you know,
yes.
I would look at people on the stage, and you realize that some of the people are like this, and some of the people are like this, and some of it's nature, and some of it's not. And
yeah.
That can be part of it, but also that individuality where you can take on so many different things. I picture you on 1,000 stages, and yet you're yourself, no matter where you are. You're going to China soon, or you know, you were in Vienna just now.
A lot of traveling,
and there's,
a lot, yeah.
You know, do you feel? Let's go back to the bigger picture for a moment, anyway. As an artist, it's quite different, I find, how you're treated in different countries, the role of the arts in a specific country. Do you feel that as a singer as well, or is the world of opera so overwhelmed in a sense? Because it is a very specific, strong world.
Well, I don't only sing opera. In fact, I really don't sing that much opera. I sing mostly concerts with either piano in recital or with orchestra. And absolutely, the emerging markets now, the emerging artistic sort of audiences are Asia, and certainly when I go to Russia. When I go to these, I'm loving this kind of travel right now. I'm going back to Asia next month. And that's really interesting because it's new, and there's a level of excitement, a level of engagement that you don't find, for instance, in Europe, where this is a very old art form. There you find the same passion, but it's mostly in a scrutinizing way. How does she hold up to the person who did this last? And 300 years ago, by the way, as well. And we also, I think we've had the age of the director, the age of the singer, the age of the conductor, and now we sort of have the age of the blogger. And that's become a quite powerful world. So I'm kind of, I find that the next generation of singers, I think, will struggle with that a bit.
How do you feel about it yourself?
I think it's wonderful to have this dialogue and this passion, but I also think the anonymous nature of blogging on the internet also, one loses a sense of really a humane dialogue, you know, and a kind dialogue, and that kind of goes out the window. So, for us, I talked to a sports psychologist once who said, you cannot just open yourself to all of this. You have to have it filtered for you a little bit, because to remain vital performers, we have to stay vulnerable and open to the audience, or what we're doing isn't interesting. So that was very good advice.
So you've tried to follow that
yes.
as best you could.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, interesting. Well, you know, in addition to the opera and the concert hall, you're also famously have engaged in jazz, not only while you were at Juilliard, but just in general. Your comfort level with variety is strong. Does that? I mean, that must have been a big part of finding your voice too, or was that a fight? Because I remember, I'll just relate it to my own upbringing, where there was a choice to be made in my career whether to go to American Ballet Theater and dance the classics, or at least that was the focus. They did more than that, but that was the focus. Or to go to New York City Ballet and work with Jerry Robbins and dance the Balanchine repertoire, neoclassics. And it seemed quite defined at that point. The dancers at New York City Ballet versus the dancers at ABT were quite different, and wonderfully so. Whereas now, things are a little bit more evened out. And I'm wondering about, in your experience, let's say, as a young singer, singing jazz as well as studying to sing all the great repertory, how they fed off each other, or did you feel like you had to choose to focus?
Well, I discovered jazz in college. I sang with a trio every weekend for 2.5 years, and I learned how to perform in that because it was the same audience. I had to entertain them. I was very shy, and it was a huge learning curve for me. But you also learn the freedom of singing scat, of improvising, and developing musicianship, because you're working with musicians who will say, you know, trade fours, who would just call out, you know, we're going to repeat that, go back to the beginning, B section, chorus. Most classically trained singers wouldn't even understand what the language was, so that hugely affected my style as a singer. And what's interesting about that is then when I entered this more focused world, to be good at something, let's face it, you have to focus. You can't, there aren't enough hours in the day, which is why ultimately I think I stuck with the practice room. It's also my personality was better suited to it. I thought, I'm fascinated with the voice and with mastering this internal instrument that is mostly operating with involuntary muscles. Every voice is different because every body is different, and I'm sure you understand all of this. This is the same experience, and then within that to find an artistic language as well. So it was such a wonderful challenge, and what I found interesting is once I entered that world, I was told for most of my career, you cannot do anything else. You cannot sing any other style of music. You'll ruin your legacy. You will be heavily criticized for it. And then you also have the opinions from the other side saying, don't even think you can cross over. You're never going to enter our world and be any good at it. And those barriers have fallen away in the last, I would say, 10 years. And now it's encouraged, in fact. And young people are doing it automatically by presenting Bach with Coldplay, and they're doing it. They're coming out of the concert halls and into the clubs, and wearing leather and working with instrumentation that is not typically classical. So I applaud this sense of collaboration that's happening, because our focus on staying in that rarefied environment has not helped us. In fact, our audience is much smaller now as a result. So this refusal to incorporate or even think about or even address the mainstream has really hurt classical music, I would say.
That's an interesting segue for me, because I think that those patterns of adaptability that have been developing, and I've seen it in dance as well, absolutely. There's this, in one way it's actually atavistic, I'll go back to that, because I think there was a time 50, 60 years ago when, certainly in dance, people were dancing one season at ABT, the next season on Broadway all the time. It was just the way it was, because that was work. But this is lending itself to a new sort of artist that is very suited to the citizen artist idea, that you can go and perform in a hospital in a different way than you might perform on the stage, and yet you're still equally valid an artist. You can be in a classroom. Do you see that with the younger artists? And specifically, I guess I should bring up Sing for Hope, where you're a founding board member, and Chairman Eva is here somewhere, Eva Haller, which is this organization which some of you may be familiar with, which it started with singers, but it's extended to musicians and dancers and all types of artists into situations where they can do good work, public service, essentially. As someone who's been involved with that in the way you have, do you see those things kind of overlapping now, and that being reciprocal? I think it's self-serving. I think it's wonderful for an artist to get to do this.
Yeah, Sing for Hope is an organization that takes all of this talent and all of these wonderful performers who say, God, in my world, I'm so focused on myself, it gets really boring. It's this constant self-promotion and self-marketing now, which is necessary in our world. And I really want to have a different kind of experience. So they volunteer their time to go into schools, hospitals, to perform for free for anybody who really would benefit from hearing this performance. And it's a reciprocal experience. And the thing that's really wonderful about it, too, is that the cost of the organization is only just that. It's kind of identifying needs and matching up. Exactly. It's dollar for dollar. It's the most extraordinary organization. And the two young women who founded it and who set it up are, in their own right, busy building their own careers and mothers, wives, and I just applaud their energy and their commitment. It's just an incredible group.
I think if you think about it in the larger framework, it's the same as citizenship in general. Eric Liu is a guy I met recently who has a thing called Citizens University, and he's advocating that citizenship being self-serving, essentially. The terminologies can be questionable, but I think you probably see what he's saying. It is that in the act of taking part, you are serving yourself. You are saying, I do have an opinion, I'm going to voice it. I will be a citizen. And it's the same thing as artists. When you talk about declining audiences, for instance, I've often said, let's stop whining about it. Let's stop complaining that it's not popular and tell people you should like it. And say instead, how are we relating? Why aren't we relating? Maybe we should be more a part of what society is doing. And it's not catering so much as citizenship, being a part of it. And I love that idea. And it goes right down to, you doing third Billy Goat, or Yo-Yo playing, sitting second cello, with the orchestra, but mostly about sharing the principles of what it means, like you said, to perform. I think that's that sheer moment when a child or an adult can feel like they're a part of something, that it's pivotal. So I'm hoping, that the young artists who get more of these opportunities, and I don't think, I'm interested, I'm privileged to be, I've just joined the board of Sing for Hope, so I'm kind of giving it a big old plug here. But the idea of, yes, there's volunteerism, and I should point out I learned about it through Jacqueline Bollier, a young singer here who volunteers with this organization. It's a part of becoming a better artist, and you're doing good work. Why not, right? Absolutely.
And you'll see pianos around the city this summer that have been painted by artists who, and it's for the citizens, it's really for anybody to come and play. And it's a wonderful thing when in a time when pianos are being destroyed and being thrown away because nobody can seem to find a home for them, you'll find that when you see them on the street, they are used and they are loved and appreciated.
It's a fantastic thing. How many of you have seen that here in the city in past years? Yeah, it's such a great thing. I remember the first one I discovered, Heather and I were, my wife Heather Watts and I were at the end of the pier on 70th Street on the west side in the Hudson, right at the very end. Oh, it was like coming upon, you know, a bag of gold. It's like, wow, look at this here.
Right.
And sure enough, somebody walked over who could actually play, which was just, you know, it's thrilling. It's thrilling.
I also feel so strongly that self-expression is important. You know, creativity and self-expression on any level, whether you're writing, whether you're doing a craft, whether you're cooking, it completely is at the foundation of what makes us as individuals content, happy, involved, committed. We talk about the zone, we talk about all of these places. It doesn't have to be this constant strive for betterment financially and in every other way. It can be just being absorbed in a process and something that brings one satisfaction. And what I found in terms of thinking about the arts, I mean, just to ask yourself, what's the difference between art and entertainment? It's a really hard question to answer. I've been spending a lot of time on this lately. Do you have an answer for that, Damian?
I find them, in the end, equivalent. I mean, my instinct on it is it's about whether it's appreciable or not. It's not about whether it's entertainmentally appreciable or whether it's, you know, high artistically appreciable. Does it speak to me? Does it have a moment when it, you know, does it make me cry? Does it have something about it? And that can be what might be, some might say, oh, that's just entertainment. I say, oh, well, you know what, I was moved and that's great for me. I mean, I think we just need to make better art, that's all. Whether it's
the eye of the beholder in a way. It's how it's affected you.
What do you think?
Well, you know, some of it is history. A Puccini opera was probably entertainment when it was prepared, and now it's art because it's part of opera, which has become an historic genre. So it really depends a little bit on time, actually, through this filter. It's also because the reason I'm asking this question is because I get asked, why should the arts be supported? Why can't it be commercial like everything else? Why does opera have, how in this year do we still have patrons of the arts? And it's a very interesting question, and why do we need, so of course it's very expensive what we do. An orchestra is expensive. The training that we receive takes time and effort. But I think if we're seeing the world through a filter that is historic, that is through the heart, the mind, and the emotions, and not just the mind, we come to a better understanding. We come to an intuitive understanding, and through that sort of creativity mode as well, we're enlightened. When I'm on stage and I'm having a really great night, I do things I've never thought to do before because they just come to me in the moment. And I'm sure that's what, I mean, there's a reason why Einstein and Jefferson worked playing the violin. You know, it enables us to tap into that resource that if we're just looking at a computer screen, or if we're just really thinking in a work mode all the time, which I tend to do, I have to really get away from it, we don't find that peace.
That privilege. It's our privilege to have if we take it. And I think that's part of this new-ish, I should say, philosophy that kind of see happening certainly in government.
Yes.
If you think about what Rocco Landesman did in his 4 years as chairman of the National Endowment for the Arts, he really did stop saying the NEA has no money. And he started saying, okay, what are we going to do for health and human services? How are we going to be a part of that? And sure enough, there was a lot of things he could do with that. Big, important things in health and the arts that had nothing to do with the NEA budget that got done. And to education, to transportation, to housing and urban development, all of these things. And my feeling about it, and I don't know if you agree or not, is that these are huge opportunities for arts organizations to address some of the problems of scale that you discuss. I mean, so many people in this room know exactly what Renee is saying when it says, oh God, it costs a lot. Yes, it costs a lot. And there's like always, you know, that balance of what ticket sales cost, you know, how much that covered in 1972 to now is like a cartoon. I mean, it's laughable, you know, what it covers now, how much has to be raised. But there's another way, I think, to start making that up, and that's about being a part of your society in a less rarefied way, which is a challenge.
Yeah. Well, in terms of, let's take opera, you know, I'm the creative consultant for Lyric Opera of Chicago, which is what started me to focus on all of these questions. And what we've done traditionally in the last 100 years in the United States is we've built these phenomenal theaters, beautiful theaters. We've created organizations in most of our major cities that had orchestras and some ballet companies, obviously, and opera companies, and people came, and they filled it. And some of these theaters seat 3,000, 4,000, 3,500. And now, of course, the struggle is filling them. And in those days, they were actually turned away. So it's a fascinating problem because we've built these temples, really temples, and expected people to come on and on and on, generation to generation. Well, a recent generation has said, you know what, this isn't really relevant to my life. I listen to popular music, and those guys have become classics. And classical just means that it's been around for a while and it's been proven to be good, shall we say. So I don't really need it. You know, yes, maybe it's good if somebody studies an instrument or something as a child, but thank God I don't have to do that anymore. So we have to go out now into the community, get out of those doors, and serve the community. What do you need? What do you want? I mean, Yo-Yo says this beautifully too, is have all of these graduates from these schools say, I'm gonna come to you, we have the string quartet, and you know, how can we serve you? What music do you want to hear? How would you want to hear it? How can we engage with youngsters in this community? So it's about re-educating or changing our system of education in the conservatory to say, figure out how you can contribute to society. I feel very strongly when I see my children who are constantly communicating with people through Facebook, through texting, and not in a face-to-face conversation with some depth, that the sense of community that one experiences in any kind of artistic venue is really important. Just getting people together, just sitting there and having a communal experience is incredibly important. It doesn't matter where it is. We can do it anywhere.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right in so many different ways, that these are moments, use the word engage, where people and artists and art can be engaging, or it can be an isolating experience. And I think that's a paradigm shift. I think that we've seen issues with that. Ann Parsons is here, who was a great executive director at City Ballet, now runs the Detroit Symphony. And in that, they had a well-known labor dispute about many issues, but one of them was literally about how are we going to relate to our community? Is this type of work part of what it means to be a musician today? And it was not really smiled upon, I think Ann would tell you, but she would also tell you that I asked her about this 2 weeks ago, I think I saw her, and I said, so how is it going? And she said, well, you know, 50 of the musicians are participating now, and it was 6, I think, the first year. And I said, have you had a turnover? Are they different musicians? And she said, no. And then she said, but yes. It's changed. It's a changing dynamic, and that's essential, that moment. Yeah. In Chicago, let's talk about Chicago. I've been lucky enough to be there with you on some of these ventures. That's a particular situation. Sorry, New York, but Chicago's got something quite special going on. Between the arts and economics and education. How does that go for you in terms of what do you think the other, whether it's the lyric opera or, you know, the arts world in general there, as far as embracing this new paradigm? is going? Everybody coming along?
Well, you know, it's always a challenge. Collaboration is a challenge. People are protective of their own organizations. There's certainly their boards, their patron base. However, I would say it's a very good environment in general because there's so many shared board members between the organizations, and also it's a great arts city. I mean, the theater, it's probably the richest theater center in the country, and because there's so many smaller groups. So we just did Second City's Guide to the Opera. So Second City being a brand that is probably the best known brand, sports aside, coming out of Chicago. And it was a kind of a nerve-wracking thing because you think, well, gosh, who's going to come to this? And will kids sort of say, no way, I'm not going to anything that has the word opera in it? Oh my gosh. And it was such a success. Sir Patrick Stewart was my co-host, and that we're bringing it back and we'll tour. They humanized the art form. They put it in Starbucks, at bus stops, and in Kinko's. They completely humanized it. You could, I mean, so not quite to where you're singing at the stoplight like we were, but certainly it was
a five-part harmony.
Exactly, yeah. So I'm finding that it's going well, and we've been working with Rahm Emanuel and the government in Chicago to advocate for arts in public schools. The Chicago public schools are extraordinarily troubled, and one of the things he did in his honeymoon, is doing in his honeymoon first year, is trying to lengthen the school day, so they have a similar length of day to other major school districts. And Damian and Yo-Yo and I went and advocated with the members of the board and the Chicago Public Schools to say, can we please have a piece of that designated for the arts, make it part of the core curriculum. And not only did they say yes, but they had a series of town hall meetings in the city, and the citizens said their first priority was an arts plan for Chicago, which amazed us all.
It's really a stunning series of events. I mean, maybe this is when stars align, but we have a mayor in Chicago who, at that press conference, these are not words I ever expected to hear, he said, as a former ballet dancer, I can say, and it was stunning. I mean, it really was something else. But the message that he sent from those first days was, first of all, it was about deliver something that's going to change education in this city and also change economics in this city. How can the arts be a part of that? And in a true, just series of lucky things, the arts organizations all responded. I was privileged on behalf of the Aspen Institute to have a convening with the new head of schools about a year and a half ago, where it was first discussed, can we get to this point of having a new arts education plan, and can we take over that part of the longer school day? That conversation, it happened actually. And we stood there at that press conference, and the longer school day is happening, and arts is a part of those extra hours, which were always said, we don't have time. Well, we have some more time now. And it's not just arts, again, for kumbaya. It's really nice. It's real. Teachers are using them. Yeah. Yeah,
absolutely. And that sense of, and the last thing that we did was create a whole, a volunteer from each school to come together and form a committee. And this is a volunteer position, so they will together forge a plan that's right for the whole city school district. Because what we've had in this country before is that in even major cities, you'll have two schools close together. One will have phenomenal education for children and available opportunities for them to perform or create or do whatever they want to do in their own vernacular, their own language. Rap is part of this. Everything is part of this. And the school next door will have nothing. So it's very unfair, and it's trying to equal the opportunities for all children in our cities. That is something we're working towards.
I think that's really, probably the final point I would love to keep discussing here is that access issue. The idea that the arts are there for all of us, for all children, for all neighborhoods, and that has really not been the case, where the arts budgets were slashed in all of the poorer neighborhoods. And it's a crime, in a sense, not to give a kid a chance for imagination, a chance for creativity, a chance for flexibility, all these things that they come along with. And it really comes down to, as you just said, Renee, some of it's literally coordination. It's like, are people talking to each other? Are the arts
Right.
organizations connected in the right way with the school system to provide what's needed where?
Best practices, simple, just communicating with each other. I talked to a woman in Germany last year who is working with small children, with young children, and she said in schools that she's gone into where this doesn't exist, she's so crushed because she'll start to do songs with we're talking little children, and none of them can sing. And when we grew up, we could all sing. We all sang together, and that's this sense of community that's so crucial. If you sing together, you have somehow formulated this beautiful community. And she said to go in and work with them and have them find that, oh my gosh, I can make a tune. I can actually, singing doesn't cost anything. Anybody can do it. It doesn't even require any training, really. But you have to do it. And how tragic if we're in a situation where children in our schools are not finding any root of expression, no self-expression. I think that our country has to value the arts, and the arts is an umbrella for everything that somebody can do. Or we don't have any way to put a spin on things like what happened in Boston the other day. We have no common communal language. We have no language of expressing a communal sadness or a communal grief or joy. We have to have that, and it starts at a very early age.
We have microphones, and we can do a few questions in the remaining time we have. And if you'd like to raise your hand, please just a short question. For Renee or for myself, and we'll take it from there. Gentleman in the back, Manuel Dalu.
Hi. I have a question for Ms. Fleming. Mozart would expect people during the performance of his works to applaud, to talk, even to eat if they happen to be at dinner time. We've gone from that to we expect dead silence during any performance. To what extent do you think that may be partially responsible for that detachment that exists today between young people and going to a concert?
The formality of the experience in classical music and opera, which is obviously what I know the best, is definitely a barrier. I still meet people all the time who say, oh gosh, I couldn't possibly go to the opera. I don't know what to wear. I don't know how to behave. Do I have to wear a tuxedo? I don't know how to behave. I don't know when to clap. So it can be intimidating, the formality. And Mahler 100 years ago, just 100 years ago in Vienna, started closing the doors to the opera the minute the performance started. So people couldn't come in late. They couldn't talk. They couldn't interrupt. It was much less formal before then. And that created this sort of worshipful atmosphere. And I would love to see a presentation that offers both experiences to people, because there are people who really just want to go in and have this experience and have it be uninterrupted. And there are other people who might really want a different kind of experience, one with visual aids, one with narrators, one with one that humanizes the whole thing. So how do we talk about this presentation? And you're right, it has, to some degree, made it more difficult. In Europe, when you go to the opera, it's very casual. When you go to the theater in London, people are in shorts and sneakers. So there are different areas that have kind of changed the performance experience. I mean, I taught my children, I want you to look nice when you go to the opera out of respect for the performers, to make it an event, to have them have a sense of expectation. So, but it's a total it's personal, and it shouldn't, that's a really good question, and I'm not exactly sure how to address that, but you're right.
In line with what you're saying, how do you feel about the Met's HD performances?
I think the Met's HD performances that are broadcast live into cinemas around the world, I think more than 2 million people now see every opera, has been the greatest invention in opera since super titles. And I have been around long enough to have them both, experience both. I was singing, in fact, at the very beginning of my career, The Marriage of Figaro, and The Recitative, all in Italian, of course, and then we had super titles, and suddenly I thought, wait, they're laughing. What do? Do we have to stop and wait? Do we have to wait for the laughter to finish? It was a shock when people knew what it was about. Yeah. And when I sang Rosenkavalier for the first time at the Met with super titles, I got so much mail and so many love letters from people who said, "Oh, the Marshallin, my heart was breaking and I never knew how tragic her character was." So HD broadcasts are doing the same thing. I now have sung in South Africa and Scandinavia for audiences that in some cases don't even have an opera company, and they already know me. I arrive, I get off the plane, and 3 people walk up and say, "You know, I liked your hair better the last time. You know, we're coming to your concert." So it's fabulous, and to see close-ups of us, I think, is also a beautiful thing. It's theater.
And it also prepares, you know, young people in ways that you just can't even imagine. We went through this at New York City Ballet with the Nutcracker, where there was some talk about a movie version might take away from the actual audience, but all it did is actually lower the age. Kids could then understand what they were seeing. They could come much younger because they knew what was coming next, and they appreciated it, and they had a sense of the drama of it from having
Oh, that's
been in the
great.
movie.
Yeah.
So it actually did the exact opposite. People had to see the live thing, which was interesting.
Excellent.
Yes. Okay. We have one, somebody, yes.
You talk about the fraying of community and how people are singing less, and you think of one area where people do sing, and that's in religious ceremonies and milestones like funerals and weddings. Could you comment about how you can leverage that and make more people involved in the community?
Well, a lot of my generation of singers discovered their voices through all of these religious organizations, and that was the communal singing piece, if it wasn't in schools. And of course, music education and music was a strong part of schools, also in my generation. So that experience is important, but it's been tremendously reduced. I mean, there were community choruses, for instance. There were swingle singer groups and barbershop quartets all across the country. That's hard singing. I mean, you have to be a great musician to do that, you know, just talking about just singing. Composers 100 years ago practiced their works on their friends at home who were all amateur musicians who played instruments really well. That was our audience. People came who appreciated what we did because they tried to do it themselves. They were amateurs. So that is, without that, it's very hard to connect to what I do. You know, I sang a performance at the Met when a dog was on stage and sang the high notes a little better than I did. I was not amused. And, you know, but I think that must be what it's like for audience members who hear us and think that is bizarre that a human being can do that. If you haven't tried it, my costumes, for instance, in opera are unbelievably made. If I didn't sew my high school prom dress, I would not get it. I would not understand the amount of skill that the people have who create these costumes. So it is a real problem. Capitalizing on it, I think, you know, I don't know the answer to that. I'm just starting to address this whole issue myself, and Damian's bringing me along, so.
Well, there's a community building aspect that we recognize when we see it. It's like genius. What do you know? You know it when you see it. You feel it. And there's something about being able to join in a note. Maybe we'll join in a note before we leave here today. Just one note that we all can find our own way to say it. Or to stand and do 2 simple steps. You guys ever see Where is Matt, that video? This guy who goes around the world and he does the simplest little dance and everybody joins in. And there's something about it, you start to watch and he's literally just going like this. And he's doing it in everywhere from Togo to Swaziland to, you know, the DMZ in Korea. And people join in, and there's something about it that we recognize. We say, oh, there's that moment when you can be a part of something with another human being. And all too often, probably in this day and age, as you said, you know, we are behind our gadgets. We've got all that. But these are precious opportunities to take part. And certainly the religious ceremonies are, as you said, you know, just the horrific events in Boston almost require a certain joint breath And
Right.
whether it comes a note after or a moment when we all, like Balanchine's Serenade, when the whole stage is full of dancers just raising one hand, and it's just, you feel like, okay, we can be a part of something together. It's a tool.
Well, there's a reason why people have gathered in Boston Commons, because they want to have that sense of not being alone in that moment, of sharing some sort of, as we said, grief or commonality or solidarity.
Or joy, if we can find, those moments in life that we can have together. And they're all too rare in some ways, that, because it's a skill. I mean, in a sense, Sir Ken Robinson talks about the creativity index of a child peaking at about 4, and by 6, getting less, by 8, by 10, by 12, it's gone, because you've worked and you've let
Right.
go of those moments
The
that you
discipline.
can actually think.
Well, the primal scream is only, 5 steps removed from what I do. It's, because when you think, I try to tell
Very
students,
useful
I
with the
say,
third graders, by the way.
Yeah, all right. I say, you go to a sports event, right? You're screaming for your team. And I say this mostly to adults. And I say the next day, you're hoarse, right? Okay, we're doing the same thing, but we're trained, it's cultivated, it's a highly sophisticated scream, and the next day we're supposed to be able to do it again. So that's the training piece. And this idea that the voice, unique in each one of us, that we can open our mouths and make a sound that relieves our hearts, is just such a compelling thing, and anybody can do it. By the way, I totally love this focus in television now on The Voice, American Idol, Glee, Smash, on and on and on. Suddenly we're in a singer-based society where everyone's judging.
There's dance shows too.
Yeah, that's right, that's right. And I've watched my children's schools, I have watched the level of performance come up and up and up, and it's because they're seeing these kids go from 0 to 10 in two shows. And they're mimicking, so they have, a lot of them have a flash and no substance. I see this in the high school kids too, but I just think, wow, when we were performing, we were scared and stiff and mumbling.
It's harnessing something else that's a communal quality that we share, which is competition. The idea
Yes,
that there
true,
can be,
true.
You get some skin in the game, and that's a big part of it
Yes.
too. I want to participate. I want to. Okay, I'll put myself. Oh, I'll try, and then
Yeah.
you see.
We
you
need to
know?
get that dialogue expanded to other art forms, so people say, wow, there's a much wider spectrum out there than one R&B style of singing. Where's the Broadway? Where blues? Where is Nashville? They're just starting to have respect for country music in these shows.
Yeah, we've got Blake on The Voice, but we don't have.
Yeah,
Nathan
but it's
Lane
new.
yet.
No,
But-
exactly.
John, the microphone's coming.
I have a question about style. No, thank you. Style, Sam and I were boning up on the Fleming voice on YouTube and came across Dove Sono from Don Giovanni, Rosenkavalier arias from Arabella. I went to the concert that you gave of French music with Susan Graham.
Oh,
The style of these operas and French music that you did with Susan, what is it that you do to differentiate between a Mozart, a Richard Strauss, and a Poulenc?
style, I don't know, I'm curious is to know if this is the same for you. Style is the most complex, fraught issue for us, in that you learn how to sing, you get this basic technique down, and suddenly the nuances between not just languages, my next CD has 8 or 9 different languages on it, but also each country, each period, each composer has a different, slightly different requirement. It's very subtle. But I'll never forget when Elizabeth Schwarzkopf said to me when I was a Fulbright scholar in Germany, and she said, no, Italian portamento is totally different from the German portamento. And she demonstrated, and I thought, well, that's very clear. Fine. But most of the time, you never taught it. You have to sort of pick it up. And the other time I had a very rigorous stylistic education was a few years ago when I did a rock CD. And it was the music of indie alternative and college rock bands. And the guy who produced the record was so hard on me. I just said, I haven't had to work like this since I learned Mozart the first time. Everything I did, he said, oh, that's horrible. That's Las Vegas. I mean, it's laughable. You can't embarrass both of us. And so I'm in this little box trying to learn how to be a rock singer, and which required also a totally vocal technique that was different. But I find style to be a very ambiguous, sort of enigmatic study. I learned it by listening. YouTube is phenomenal because all of the historic recordings have been uploaded on YouTube, and you can have a complete education by just spending 3 hours on any given piece. It's fabulous.
It's fascinating because there's, kind of like I mentioned earlier about Arthur Mitchell with the cheekbone and the light, there's little clues that you can look back on. I'm sure you have them, where you say, oh, there was this moment when somebody said one thing and it
Right.
opened that door. And
Yes.
we're not always privileged, obviously, to work with the creators. We're talking about Mozart here. Mozart isn't here to say, Renee, here's actually, this is the clue. So you have to find it or talk
Right.
to people who have it. I mean, in my career, I was lucky enough to work with Jerry Robbins, and it was quite clear after a time what differentiated his style. There was no question what it was. It was his style, and it was very different than everything else we did. And that was really valuable to get.
That's my favorite thing, to work with the creators. Absolutely favorite thing. And I haven't gotten to do it very much. And it's just a joy. First of all, if somebody creates something on you, then it fits you, and it's everybody else who has to conform. Ha!
That's right. So we're nearing the end of our time, but I wanted to pick up just where you just left off there. I heard Wynton Marsalis talk about something a couple months ago that really moved me. He talked about how he and the band, sometimes before a performance, they'll do roll call. And roll call is where you just say a name or two of people who moved you, who made that difference in your life. And there's just like, you look back and you say, it's not necessarily, the famous one. It's just, they just go around the van and they talk about roll call, ghosts in the house,
Well, my book called The Inner Voice, we set it up around mentors because that's been so important to me and so crucial. Most recently, Leontine Price has been amazing because I've been able to meet with her and have a 3-hour-long session where she really preaches to me. Where after the first one I had, I said, after 5 minutes, I said, Miss Price, do you mind if I take notes? And she said, no, go ahead. And so I took all these notes because she gave me advice. She said, I just feel that you're struggling and nobody could help you at this stage except someone who's been there. Such generosity. And this is something that I've really benefited from all along, from Marilyn Horne, from Beverly Sills, who I had lunches with her before she passed away, where she'd say, why did you sing that role? You're leaving blood on the floor. You could have done this role, which is so much more grateful. It's invaluable to have that kind of conversation with someone like that. But I've had a lot of inspiration. I was an avid reader as a child. I would not have the imagination to bring characters to life if I hadn't been, because I'm not naturally histrionic. I know you won't believe that, but I was, as a shy songwriter in my teen years, I was a Joni Mitchell fanatic, and then I went to jazz. But the classical was always there, the singing, this real obsession with singers and singing. I'm doing a big project at the Kennedy Center in November, celebration of the American singer, and it's across all genre. We'll have seminars, we'll bring together panels from doctors and people in the business and performers and managers, and then have a big performance in the end, because this is what fascinates me. Why is that style so different? Why is that lifestyle different? Why do jazz singers struggle now to find their audience, or cabaret? Why are people having surgeries? what happened to Adele? What's happened to people, and some of my colleagues as well. So this is a dialogue that it's an ongoing passion for me.
Well, I think we should close, but I have one request. Can we think of a phrase that we can make them all sing with us? Just a single phrase. I have one in the back of my mind.
You do?
I do.
Okay.
It's not as good as what you're going to have.
What are you thinking?
Well, in deference to my career, I was going to have them sing, "And dance by the light of the moon." All together. And dance by the light of the moon.
Well done, well done.
Renee, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And thank you all for being here, and we'll see you again. Thank you, President Grab.